Aston Villa versus Newcastle, two of the form teams in the Premier League right now, both desperately chasing a spot for Champions League football next season. This should be a really tight, combative clash. But no, Aston Villa made it look very, very easy. A dominant 4-1 win. So how did they do it? Let's take a look. Now, as you would expect in a high-level Premier League game, there was a lot going on that we could talk about in this video. But the main thing that I really want to focus on is Newcastle high pressing, because for me they are one of the best in Europe at this, and Aston Villa trying to play out from the back. And like I said, the reason why this is so important in this game is because Newcastle's are the masters of the high press. If you look at their defensive numbers, the passes per defensive action, they are the 6th best in the Premier League this season. Now that means the opposition basically don't normally get very many passes before Newcastle are going to tackle them. And once again, they were aggressive with their man-to-man pressing system in this game. So in terms of how that man-to-man press works, it works with committing defenders from the backline further forward to try and put the Aston Villa players under pressure. So let's say Martinez has got the ball in goal. Initially, this doesn't look man-to-man, right? Because Isak is up against 2 players. So that's literally not man-to-man, but he's actually going to get a lot of help from Harvey Barnes. So Isak is going to move across towards Tyrone Mings, and Barnes is going to come across onto Konza. Now you may think, Matty Cash suddenly has a lot of room on the right-hand side, so surely Villa can play out down this side of the pitch. Well, maybe, sometimes, yes, but not very often at all, because Livramento from left-back was coming all the way forward, engaging in the high press, like in moments like this. Livramento incredibly high up the pitch. In terms of the rest of the Newcastle team, they continue to be man-to-man. Joel Linton will move high up the pitch, Guimaraes will do the same, Tonali, and also the back 3 will literally go man-for-man, and this is an incredibly bold approach from Newcastle, and it's worked for them. We saw it in the Carabao Cup final the other week. Newcastle pressed Liverpool off the pitch. Liverpool could not deal with it. So how come Aston Villa could? Well, I'll tell you why. There's a few players, really. There's Ollie Watkins, who is just an amazing outlet player. He's so good as a player to chase a ball, to hold a ball up. He's fantastic. You've also got Morgan Rogers, who is just proving to be an exceptional footballer, and also Youri Tielemans. Now, we're going to start off with Youri Tielemans because he was the player responsible for sometimes getting on the ball and playing out in the first phase. You know, Villa do want some sort of control in this match, so they don't feel that they can always go long. There are moments where they are going to try and play out from the back, and this is where Tielemans comes in so handy, because he's just an elite technician. He is so good with the ball. His control, his first touch, the way he shifts the ball, and also his passing range, they're all fantastic. So let's say Villa play out down the left-hand side. What we're going to see is Villa trying to find one of these more advanced players, perhaps John McGinn, who's quite a good, strong player back to goal. He's dropping into these positions to try and pick the ball up. And what they're trying to do is just pull a player, Guimaraes in particular, just a foot or 2 away from Tielemans, so that they can then give Tielemans the balls in situations like this, where they know he's got the quality to deal with it. And from here, he's got just an immense passing range. We've spoken about this a lot. He's one of the best long passers in the Premier League, in my opinion. I truly believe that and have felt that way for a long time. And he gave Villa so much joy playing out from the back. But interestingly, whilst I've spent, the first few minutes of the video talking about this, this wasn't the decisive point in how Villa moved forward and destroyed the Newcastle high press. It was actually, whoops, that's the wrong player. It was actually Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins in particular, and then the 3 in these areas behind him. And the reason for this is because Ollie Watkins is so good at manipulating the opposition. You see, if you are playing against a man-to-man press, as we can see here, Newcastle man-to-man in every single position, if you're playing against that sort of press, the best thing that you can do is test those players, see how far they really want to go. So yes, Fabian Schär wants to be man-to-man with Watkins, so how far will he go? If Watkins drops all the way here, is Schär still going to follow him? And if so, it's going to make space for someone else to run in behind, like we can see in this situation here. But the other thing is, Watkins is also going to run the other way. So not just coming towards the ball, which people often feel is the solution against a man-to-man press. It's not always the way. It's not always the way, and Ollie Watkins proved this. Because what he did more regularly was sprinted the other way in behind. And basically, Newcastle are fearful of his pace. It's obvious to see why. Ollie Watkins has been one of the most clinical players in the Premier League over the past few seasons. So Newcastle are a little bit worried about him. As he makes this run in behind, Fabian Schär is going to drop off with him. What this does, though, is it creates a space in this area here. We've got a little zone here where there's suddenly a little bit of space suddenly starting to form. And when you can get the likes of Asensio, Rodgers and McGinn into that space, you're going to cause problems. The question is, how do you get them into that space? Because currently they're being man-marked, so there isn't naturally room for them to move into. But there is, because they're rotational, because they're fluid with their movement. This was something that we spoke about in our Asensio video, one of the first videos we did on this channel. By the way, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more regular content over here on the AJ Talks Tactics channel. But anyway, back to this. How did Villa tear this apart? They were fluid with their movement. You can see in the average positions, McGinn, Asensio, Rodgers don't exactly have a fixed role. They were really difficult to pick up because they were given the license to move into different zones. And this causes a massive problem for Newcastle because let's say the ball goes long, up from Martinez to Watkins. Watkins did well in the duels. He couldn't necessarily always get the ball down, but he's never going to make it easy for the Newcastle defenders. He's always going to trouble them, get into the channels, etc. He makes life really, really tough. What he also does, though, is he drags players out of position, and it creates his space to arrive into. And let's say Rodgers moves across the pitch, all the way over here, like we could see happening in moments. Does Burn follow him all the way over there? You know, and this is what I mean about asking questions of the man-to-man press. Do you really, as Dan Burn, want to go over and start crossing over with your other centre-back for the sake of being man-to-man? Sometimes you don't. And what that does is it gives Villa a little bit of room. And we can see this so nicely on this goal. Rodgers picks up the ball in the space behind Ollie Watkins. Villa are so dangerous in this position. John McGinn, Rodgers, Asensio are all very, very good ball carriers. They may not be the quickest players in the world, you know, they're not speed demons by any means, but their ball carrying is very, very impressive. They're very strong, and more often than not, their pass selection is also pretty good in the final third. And if we just go back to that goal, we can see that, the pass selection, finding the player in the wide position. This time it was Martin coming all the way from deep, and this is the next point. If you're man-to-man, from a Newcastle perspective, you got to stick to your man. Quite obvious, right? But we saw for that goal, Martin in space. And this is the problem. If Martin makes a run forward, does Murphy really have, first of all, the desire to track him all the way back? Because, you know, it can be quite long doing that, up and down the pitch all day. But also, does he have the concentration? It's very easy to switch off just in one moment. And in a man-to-man system, that can be the end of you, because it means Martin is now the spare man. And we saw that for the goal. He arrived into that space, which had been created by Ollie Watkins, and suddenly Villa have the ball in the back of the net. So Ollie Watkins may have not had his most clinical day in front of goal, although he still did alright, didn't he? He may not have had the most clinical day, but he was still by far the most important player on the pitch because it was his runs forward that completely manipulated and destroyed the Newcastle backline, and that created space for the others to arrive into. And again, when you've got McGinn, Asensio, and you've got Morgan Rodgers arriving into that space, they are dangerous, they are magic on the ball at times, and they make something happen. And sometimes they make something happen 4 times in one match, and you score 4 goals, with this one from Onana being particularly impressive. All in all, a really, really good performance from Aston Villa. Like I said right at the start, I was expecting a really tight game, and yes, it was for large parts of it, I guess, until the last 30 minutes. I think Aston Villa was still the better team throughout the match. They carried far greater threat, they seemed to play with a greater intensity, and that was because of the way that they created space and then attacked it. That was the key for me in this game, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What was the key? Was it those runs of Ollie Watkins? Was it the passing of Yuri Tielemans? Or was it the ball carrying of Morgan Rodgers? Or perhaps you noticed something else? If you did, let me know in the comments down below. But apart from that, we are finished for today's video. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.